This is going to be my first video I've made so far. I'm still not too sure exactly where this is going, what exactly I'm going to be talking about all the time. Maybe more current events or philosophy or different things, but I felt the need to make videos for some reason. Maybe for myself to reflect on my thoughts later on, see how they change over the course of time, because I've noticed I've changed a lot over the last year and a half or so after I've really started being critical about the way I feel about myself and my own thoughts and ideas. I'm still unsure exactly who this is for. Maybe just me, maybe some other people in the same situation as I've been in the last year or so. But maybe for my children. I've got two boys and a girl who are going to grow up in this country, in this world. And maybe they'll have something to look back on about me that they might be able to grasp how I came to certain ideas that I have about things, because I know many times during my life growing up I questioned why certain people did certain things, including my parents, why they made certain decisions, why they thought certain ways. And maybe this will shed some light to them and others, my processes of change and thought. But to start, I guess mainly as an adult, I've always wanted to be a musician and always pursued that a lot. Like not the actual job, not the profession, but just playing music and getting better at, guitar and making music and things in general. I never, to be honest, never pursued being in a band as hard as I could, with the fervor of someone who actually wanted to do that. Which is one of my regrets, but at the same time I was able to build a life with my wife and have my children, which now I think is one of the most important things I have done. Which I think is one of the most important things anybody can do, because it's one of the only things you can leave behind. It is your children and your name, who you are, who you were, as long as people are raised to remember that. And that took a while for me to come to terms with, whether it was important to leave something behind. I mean, everybody knows it's important, but like, why? Why is it important? And it's still taken me a while to figure out why. And I may not have the full grasp as to that either. But after reading a few books, which I've been really trying to do lately, I've always been a reader, but I've never sat down and read books like a lot. I just got done with 1984 by George Orwell, and I'm glad I waited till now to read it, because I had so much other context to put into what he was saying, that if I had read this in high school, I don't think I would have gotten the same context. And it's kind of like being told to read The Giver when you're a kid. It's you could grasp certain content, and I remember it touching me, like all the different problems the boy had to go through in The Giver. But it wasn't as impactful as me looking back at some of the situations now as a father with children, with the decisions he made with the child, which wasn't even his, and looking at 1984, and Winston being, in his 40s, and Julia being in her 20s, I believe, if I remember right. I have a little bit more of a larger pool of information and problems I've had to go through, and thoughts and situations I've had to come up with solutions to, that when looking at what they had to go through in the book and what George Orwell was explaining, I realized I could maybe put it in a different context that I might not have before, even if it wasn't the context I wanted. And I think that's what I forgot for a long time as an adult, that there's a context to everything, and it's said a lot, especially in like religious debates. Oh, you've taken it out of context, and often that's more true than people want to admit. That there is a context. There's a context, and that's not just the context of what they were saying, it's your understanding of what they were saying and why. Like someone could say, let's take current events and say, you know, do you think we should have a stronger border? Do you think we should allow immigrants in this country? Just that simple question. And some people would say, no, that's racist. And is it racist, but not always. Depending on the context, it's not. Because if you take like Japan into consideration, it's a pretty homogenous society. They're all Japanese, and they don't offer immigrations to others, but are they racist? No. I mean, you could point out many different things about their society that, they have a very populous area, and they want to keep their traditions. They don't want extra people, shaking it up, I guess you could say. It's not racist, but then some people could say, they point at other context of people who maybe possibly are racist or sheltered away from them, so they're not even around immigrants or people of color or anything else like that, and they might word things in a way that seems racist, but in all reality, they're not even around people of that color, so they're not racist. They're not impacting anybody. And immigration, I mean, that's a whole nother topic. But I look at things a lot differently. I try to see the context now. I try to ask the questions that counter mine, like God debates and atheism and religion. Over the last couple of years, I've got a newfound respect for religion because of the context that I try to see. I mean, we can't deny the fact that there's 1.3 billion people in India that are mainly Hindu that have a context for their beliefs, and they understand what they say, and they live their life in a certain way. Maybe not everybody, but they've gotten to the point where there's a billion people who are there that believe it, and it holds their society together. Whether or not we agree with their society, there's to an extent it's allowed it to grow. And we often forget that what allows people to grow. And often, to get back to children and our civilization, which maybe this has to do with more than anything, that is what keeps civilization growing, is our families, our children, our ability to have children, to raise our children in a right way. Often people of my age, or maybe younger now, I'm 31, they want to live this life where they're free to do whatever they want. And that's fine. You should be free to do whatever you want, but oftentimes we don't even know what we want, so we do what feels good and think that's what we want. And I did that a lot. You think that getting drunk or doing these other things and traveling and doing all these things that takes away from what you already have is what you want. But in all reality, it's the context of your life, of the things that you have. If you're looking at things in a certain light, you're not going to like them. I'm not, it was a lot of self-reflection on myself to, I didn't talk to my parents for a long time. I didn't talk to my mom for 10 years because of the context I had on the relationship and hers and what she's done and what I've done. And, I took into consideration my thoughts of it, but never hers. And it doesn't belittle any of the mistakes anybody made, because people make mistakes, But you can't change the fact that they made the mistake. So you kind of got to just evaluate why, or what were the circumstances? What would you do? And I had to realize a lot of hard situations that my parents went through that I haven't had to go through because they already went through it. Maybe there were some that I went through because of that and as a result of maybe some bad decisions, but that's fine. If you're at a point where you're an adult and you're making your own decisions, there's no point in causing your parents to relive the bad decisions that they made already. If you're in a better place where you feel you're at a higher moral superiority, if you want to word it that way, which I don't, but if that's how you feel, like you're morally superior now to your parents or people who've done you wrong, then it's your responsibility to make that relationship good again. Because if someone else with less morals made it wrong, you need to make it good. And this past year, I talked to my mom again. I talked to my dad again, and I built a relationship. And my mom got to see my kids for the first time this year. And my son's 7. My other son's 5, and my daughter's 2. And she finally got to see him. And I feel bad for waiting so long because I was living my life. She was living her life. She wasn't negatively affecting me outside of the thoughts I had in my head. And there's nothing she could do now that could negatively affect me in the same way that she did when I was a child. And we often forget that when you're an adult, that's the truth. But we run around complaining about everything that everybody's done us wrong when it's up to us whether or not we let it affect us. We're told when we're kids, sticks and stones you break our bones, but words will never hurt us, and that's the truth. Sticks and stones will break your bones, but the words go into your ear and they don't make you do anything. It's up to you to decide within the context of how you feel to whether you become violent or, to say the word lightly, violent. And it took me a long time to realize that. But I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff. I need to clean up this room so it's not bad. But I've gone through my own fair share of problems. I still deal with a lot of things. But I really want to help people in some way. And even if it's only my own children looking back at this, I hope it is helping. I hope that my thoughts and my observations on certain things maybe can help someone else think about something differently. And especially with the way things are going around the world today and in our country, we need to think internally about our own problems. We need to figure out the solutions to why we feel certain ways, why we feel certain people are doing certain things wrong to us. And if we really think there are problems outside of us, we need to make sure that we are okay individually. I can't make sure you're okay or anybody else in this world is okay. I can't ensure that everybody's going to vote a certain way that helps me. I can only ensure that maybe when I make a reaction to something, that I make the best possible decision for me and my family. And that I help my children do the same thing for them, that they do what's best for them and their family, our family. Because you may want to say this country was founded on some pretty bad things, or that we did some bad things. But reevaluate where your context is for that. Because your parents and grandparents, you're here because of whatever they had to go through, good or bad, and whatever decisions they made, good or bad. And think about the good decisions and the bad decisions you've made, especially if you have children. What are your children going to look back at you and be able to say? That, oh, my dad was nothing like his grandpa to him. Like, he's not going to understand the context you have. My children don't understand how I felt about my father and my mother in the past. nor should they. They're going to come up with their own idea of the type of person they are, and more importantly, who I am. So am I going to allow my children to grow up with the same type of feelings towards me that I did my parents? I'm going to try my best not to. But they're going to form their own opinions. We need to reevaluate the context of our families. You know, whatever makes up your family. And some things are hard to fix, and sometimes you're not going to be able to fix everything. But I've been listening to a lot of this guy named Jordan Peterson. He's a professor at the University of Toronto and used to be a professor at Harvard. And he's talked out a lot about individual responsibility and virtues and principles. I'm still working on mine, and what I feel is the best thing. And it's hard, but he puts it so well, and I'll probably reference him a lot. And watching his videos really prompted me to finally sit down and read 1984, because he's got a whole reading list. And the Gulag Archipelago is the next one I really want to read, which is I wish I could remember the author, but he's a Russian, and it was in the 70s, and it's attributed as one of the books and one of the primary writings that really aided in the downfall of communist Soviet Russia. And I from what I know about it, it's really brought into light what happens to people when they give up control of their own thoughts, their own decisions, their own speech, what they think is best for them and their family. And I really think that's probably what this is all going to be about, is my own documentation of my thoughts and processes on what I'm going to do, how I view things, and speak about things. And I hope anybody who is watching this, I'm sure I'm going to ramble a lot, so I hope you can follow. And I'll probably be a little more specific the next time, but this one I really just sat down and said do it. So I'm going to do it and put this on there and get this set up a little bit better. And if anybody is watching this, feel free to comment. If you'd like to hear me discuss anything, I'll tell you what I've been really getting into. A lot of philosophy, esoteric religion and philosophy. Hermeneutic, if I could even say the word, excuse me. Hermeneutics, noetics. Basically the interpretation of word, of scripture or writings by anybody. It could be nonfiction, fiction, religious text, really trying to understand the context is basically what it is. To know there's so much symbology used in everything. I mean, think about this. Like, you go to get a tattoo, you're trying to think of a symbolistic aspect of it, why it's important to you. For as simple as a tattoo when you're a teenager. I waited a while to get mine, and mine are mainly my family, but so if someone will put that much symbology in something, and how much symbology and context that you're unaware of did writers put in their writings, or even in music and by musicians? I mean, you could Google any song and put hidden meaning in front of it, and you'll find many different interpretations. So we have to figure out what context we have. I forgot where I was going with that. I ramble a lot, but I get into the symbology. That's what it was. I try to find the symbology in things. Like Manly Hall, he's a philosopher that gets way into this kind of things. And, you can read the Bible in a certain way and almost see certain things differently than even people who follow it with all their heart, And you can read the Bhagavad Gita, which I'm going to be starting soon, and probably find many different things. I mean, just think about the Phoenix, or Harry Potter. When he, I forget which one it is, but he goes down into the basement to fight a basilisk, and it bites him. but he gets revived through the tears of the phoenix, and that's a ton of symbolism. And this is from Jordan Peterson, actually. You know, he goes down to fight this monster that when you look at it, it turns you to stone. And he goes on to say, you know, that's just like having to go somewhere and face your fear when it makes you stop in your tracks. You can't do anything. And he went down and faced it, and he still died. Or he didn't die, he got bit. So it hurt him to do that. But he did it. And because he made the best choice possible, the phoenix, which is all about life and death and rebirth, means, you know, brought him back to life, brought Harry Potter back to life. I mean, it's a simple movie. It's not simple, but there's so much symbology that most people don't even think of, like with the context you could put in it to bring it to your own life. That, you know, he went down there, faced this fear that could have stopped him in his tracks. It bit him, it changed him, it killed him. But the phoenix brought him back a new man. So he died and resurrected. Something totally different. And that's often what happens when we face something that we don't know what to do with. A problem, an issue, losing weight or working out or finding something that is totally different that you know will make your life better, but you just don't want to do it because you might fail. You know, or pursuing something or becoming a better person and understanding you did something wrong, you're going to die. Because the person that you'll become when you make that change is not the same person. It's in the Bible that it said, I think it was Paul, I could be wrong. He says, I die daily. Now you could look at that someone who just prays every day and dies in their spirit, and, you know, and that's kind of how I looked at it. And it was never explained with the context that I have in it now. But I think it more or less meant you change the person you are daily. Because you're never going to be perfect. But you strive every day to become better. And only when you're trying to be as good as you can be will that ever happen. And with these videos, I'm going to try to show you how I try to die daily. Thank you.